kind of jazzy, kind of fun. Alright, welcome back to episode 2 of the Song Completion Kit video series. If you haven't seen the first 2 episodes, I know that this is episode 2, but there's an episode 0, which is kind of confusing now that I'm actually thinking about it and saying it out loud. But go catch up with those, because I'm going to take the track that I started last time and take it to the next stage. I'll talk you through stage 2 of the kit. We'll look at the PDF and the different tips and strategies that I have laid out in there, and then we're going to actually apply that, and I'm going to show you how I took my starting point and built it into a loop. Something that I haven't said in the past couple of videos is that if you like this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more stuff like this based on finishing songs, we've got the rest of the series to come still. Other techniques, I've got lots of ideas for different kinds of music making videos to put up here as a resource for everyone to use. So stay tuned for that and subscribe if that sounds interesting to you. Alright, without further ado, let's get stuck in. Okay, then we are on stage 2 of the SCK. That is the first time I've ever said that out loud. If you remember last time, we were talking about the starting point, and today we are turning that starting point into a loop, a lovely little self-contained block of music, as I so aptly put it. So this is about taking whatever musical idea we began with and adding other context to it, basically, other musical elements, building new material around what's already there until we've got something that starts to sound like, okay, this is a piece of music. It may be 4 bars or 8 bars or 16 bars. It's just a little chunk of, here's a bunch of elements playing together, they fit together nicely, and it feels like it says something complete. It may not be an entire sentence or an entire story, but it's certainly a phrase or an element that you can use to kind of build that fuller story. So what have we got for our potential blocks then at this stage? Number 1, not being able to come up with layers that fit your idea. That's a pretty common one, and that will be something that you will probably just get better at as you get more practice and more experience. And a lot of the time it just takes trying a few different things until you find the thing that actually works, or you can tweak it, or you can change what you've already got to fit around it. Stuck with a short loop that you don't know how to make longer? You know, you might have 1 bar or 2 bars, but you're not sure how to make that into 4 bars or 8 bars of like a longer phrase. So we'll get into some ways to solve that kind of problem. And then the third potential block, this is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, but another potential block is the sounds you're using not fitting together and sounding like they belong with one another. But what are the things that we can do then to try to get from that starting point to this stage of having a loop? Once again, we've got 3 different strategies to discuss. Strategy number 1 being variations. So an easy way to build something out and make it into a longer phrase, a longer pattern, is to just kind of take what you've got, duplicate it, and tweak some elements. You may not want to tweak absolutely everything, but if you've got, for instance, like with the track that I worked on last time and that I'll be showing you how I've developed it this time, if you're starting out with a load of drums and you've got different drum sounds and they're playing different patterns and stuff like that, you could take a 1 bar loop and duplicate it, make it into a 2 bar loop, and just vary up some of the rhythms that the drums are playing. You probably don't want to, you probably don't even need to change all of the rhythms for all of the drums in that 2nd bar, because then you'll kind of just have one thing happening in the 1st bar and a different thing happening in the 2nd bar and trading off, and that might be cool. I don't know, try it. But it's just kind of about making some subtle variations on what we've just heard, so that when the 1st bar comes around again, the brain can kind of like clue into, oh, okay, yeah, we're back in that familiar territory, and then it does this different thing, and then we go back. We're really good at pattern recognition as human beings, and music, particularly dance music, but all kinds of music, are all about identifying patterns, making variations, and giving your listeners some method of interacting with the music that feels kind of fulfilling and engaging. You can then take that technique of duplicating and making variations and do it again, make your 2 bars into 4. You can make a variation of your bass line rather than of your drums. If we think about what we covered last time in terms of the rhythmic stuff, within the bar, having some rhythms repeat over the course of 4 beats and some rhythms repeat over the course of 2 beats. You can do the same thing here with bars and with these kind of bigger phrases where you can have, for instance, a drum pattern that repeats over the course of 2 bars with a variation between bar 1 and bar 2, and you can have a bass line that repeats over the course of 4 bars, where you've got one bass line for the first 2 bars and another bass line for bars 3 and 4. So having things repeating over different timescales that kind of intersect and overlap is a really great way of making your music feel more dynamic, even when the kind of bigger chunk, that 4 bars or whatever, is repeating and developing over time. There's still kind of movement happening within it. Next strategy, thinking about the roles your layers are occupying. So if you're having a problem with sounds clashing or not fitting together, or feeling like, oh, it sounds really great when I've got these 3 elements in, but then I add this 4th one in and it doesn't really work, or these 2 don't work together, it can be really helpful to try and figure out, okay, what role is each of these elements playing in my track? Is it rhythmic? Is it melodic? Is it harmonizing with some melody that I've already got? Is it a sequence of chords that's giving a particular flavor to the melody? Is it really about solidifying the groove, changing things up, keeping people guessing? So thinking about the roles in terms of their musical purpose, but then also in terms of the musical content. So are we in similar frequency ranges or pitch ranges? Have we got too many elements playing in the bass range? Are there too many things occupying that kind of really important mid-range? Are my shakers and my hi-hats and my other cymbals and stuff all overlapping each other and just kind of ruining the groove and not giving me clarity? If you identify that there are either musical roles or musical content that is overlapping between multiple elements of your loop, then try to do something about that. You might trade them off from one bar to the next, or on an 8-bar basis where the first 4 bars one of your elements is audible and the next 4 bars another element is audible in the same range, but we don't hear them both at the same time. This is something that I think about in like classic grime instrumentals and stuff like that. They're really good at doing this thing of like, okay, here's 4 bars of this, here's 4 bars of that, and then you're trading off between these A and B things. The other thing that you can do is, you don't have to do that over that long a time scale. You could do it over 1 or 2 bars, or even within a bar, chop things up and trade them off with one another, make a bit of a call and response. That can be a really fun way to rework your musical material. And the other thing that you can do is actually shift the musical content of what each sound is doing out of the way of one another. So that might be transposing things up or down, changing a rhythmic part into more of a sustained pad sound, anything that you can do to get your sounds out of the way of each other so that they can each be providing something unique to your track, and in that way make a whole that's bigger than the sum of its parts. Then the third strategy is going back to your inspirations again. If you're really stuck for what kind of elements you want to bring into your loop and build on top of your starting point idea, a really great exercise is to just take an element or a couple of elements from tracks that you really love, that you find really inspiring. But the trick here is to go for elements from songs that are really diverse. So if you're really into, I don't know, jazz, you might take a kind of chord progression that your favorite jazz pianist might play, and you might sit that underneath a and you might lay that underneath a bleepy techno melody line to recontextualize it, and combine that with a really heavy, woobby dubstep bass, and with all of that have distorted trap drums. I don't know, it could work. But my point is taking inspiration from lots of different styles of music, all things that you're really into and really passionate about, but that other people wouldn't think to put together in the particular way that you and your taste can inform you to do. There's a lot of experimentation involved with this, and not everything is going to work together right off the bat. But the whole point of these strategies is to just kind of give you something to think about, something to try, so that you can get into a point where you might hear something and think, oh, actually, I want to go off in this direction, rather than sticking strictly to a particular exercise or a particular technique that I'm setting out here. It's just about getting you in the headspace of making some changes, trying some things, responding to what you're listening to, and hopefully through that, getting to a point where you know what it is that you want to bring to your music. So that's that on that. Now I'm going to go over to Ableton and we will dig into the track that I started last time, and I'll show you what I've added to it. All right, we're back in Ableton. And we have got, I've muted everything that isn't that initial idea that we started with last time. So as a reminder, that sounded like this. Fun, kind of like groovy, bouncy, syncopated rhythm, kind of modern club style thing. And the first place that I went with this was, okay, I want to add a big beefy bass sound. And actually what I've done here is I've taken a bass sound that I just kind of made on its own just for the sake of making a bass sound a while ago, and I've just copied and pasted it into here, and I think it sounds pretty good. I think it fits the drum pattern pretty well, and I think sonically it's sitting in a space that I'm really excited about. I have no idea where to put myself so that you can actually see what I'm doing. I could do this. Hold on. Here we go. That's better. Now we can see all of the lovely controls of this wavetable patch. Wableton. I'm going to hang out up here like a little bat and just talk you through this patch really quick. Here's what it sounds like. I'm not going to get too deep into the nitty-gritty of how all of this stuff is set up. It's basically two wavetable oscillators supported by the sub-oscillator, and I'm using an envelope to affect the pitch and also to affect the speed of an LFO that's affecting various parameters, including the wavetable position of the first oscillator and the overall amplitude. What I do want to touch on real quick is that it's all encapsulated in an instrument rack, and that gives you a way to map multiple parameter changes to the same control in Ableton. So just by modulating this one parameter here, I'm changing the wavetable position of both of those oscillators there. So that's really cool. And the other parameters that I've mapped here are just ones that I thought were fun to play around with and listen to, that I might want to, when it comes to building out the track and building more variation into it, have easy and quick access to, as a reminder to myself to say, hey, here are the ones that I thought sounded interesting that you might want to play around with and automate. I'll give you a quick listen to what these parameters actually sound like and how they change the sound. So we've got macro 1 there moving through the position. All right, that's me back. So yeah, let's hear what this sounds like with the drums then. Grooving along. The other thing that I've got here is a slightly longer version of this one note bass line. And that then doesn't repeat immediately. We kind of have a long time without bass. It comes back around. Getting ahead of myself a little bit because that's the subject of the next stage of the kit, but just something that came to me that I wanted to make sure I made a note of, in a way, in Ableton, so that when it comes to that stage, I've got it there and I haven't forgotten about it. So what else is new? Well, we've got some more rhythmic layers. We've got this clap. So this is kind of intended to be kind of an alternative to that snare drum. And then we've also got a cowbell. Just basically adding in more drum layers so that I can chop and change them and keep things happening when it comes to the arrangement phase much later on. Just having the ability to swap out claps and cowbells and snare drums and different kick sounds is going to be a really big help when it comes to making sure that the arrangement stays interesting over time. The next thing that I dropped in is actually another sound from a track idea that might be like 6 or 7 years old at least. It's this pad sound. Kind of a sampler, changing rate, pitching up and down thing that I really like, and I've always really liked, and I've tried to use it in so many different tracks and it just hasn't fit. I have no idea if this is going to be the track where this works out, but I dropped it in here and kind of liked how it sounded. As I say, I keep trying over and over and over to use this one sound. Maybe this will be the one, who knows. So that's giving us some like harmonic flavour. It's quite sort of melancholic but also really pretty, of this transposing chord moving up and down in the sampler. It's got a kind of like dusty texture that I really enjoy, and I think that's a really nice offset to the super like high-tech bass sound and the really like almost kind of chuggy but syncopated drums. And then I wanted some more melodic stuff, or some rhythmic chords basically. So we've got this is just a stock Ableton sound. It's a 12-string guitar. It doesn't really sound much like one, but it's a really cool synthetic FM string sound. I've got this doing really basic rhythmic stabs. Let's just listen to it without the pad. Trying to think about what are the things that will help to solidify the groove, give dancers something to lock onto, right? It's this really consistent rhythm, and the notes are changing a little bit from the first 4 bars into the second 4 bars. But yeah, it's just another element that is solidifying that groove, giving us something to kind of grab onto in the midst of all of the kind of rhythmic madness, and also the tension and release of these notes together to these notes together is just something that I really enjoy and find kind of compelling. So this stab sound and the pad together, there's kind of a weird clash going on here. Here it sounds great. So one of the things that I've had to do is, again, we're looking ahead a little bit here, but I'm just laying the groundwork for myself now, is that I don't think that main 2-chord stab pattern fits with the pad sound that I want to try to use. So what I've done is I've made a copy of this loop and I've just trimmed it down to that 2nd chord. So now, harmonically, they fit together. They're not clashing. So if I do want to use both of these sounds together when it comes to the arrangement phase, I know that they're actually going to sit together all right. In the context of the mix, cool. And then the last element then, I'm using a lot more melodic and kind of chord things than I usually do. Maybe that's just the mood that I'm in at the moment. But I wanted another strong rhythmic element because the drums are so syncopated and there's so much going on with them. I wanted something that is just doing every single beat. And I thought, why not make that a melodic or harmonic sound with a chord? This is a preset that I believe came in the probability pack from Ableton. It's using this device here, the probability art, but we're just using this chord section of it to kind of get like a nice strum sound going on. I'll let you hear it actually. And we're scrolling through these inversions of this chord. So the actual MIDI notes, it's just the same D note over and over. But I'm using this stuff over here. It's a minor ninth, I guess. And we're scrolling through the different inversions. So the notes stay the same, but they're played at different points on the full range of the keyboard. The other thing that's going on here is we've got these 3 LFOs. So we've got one that is modulating the stiffness. So that's this element of it. So going from this kind of soft sound to this really bright kind of chimey thing. The second one is modulating that inversion. Inversion 1, inversion 2. I just thought they sounded cool, scrolling through those. And then the third one is doing very little modulation, but it is just modulating this strum control here. So at 0, strum sounds like this. It's just playing the full chord all at the exact same time. As the strum increases, we get kind of more and more of that kind of nice sort of one after the other falling over each other thing going on. But in the context of the other stuff, that sounds like this. Kind of jazzy, kind of fun. And there you have it. This is my loop. These are my raw materials. As you can see, I work in the session view here, just with the clips, chopping and changing, auditioning different things. And that's just for my personal workflow. You may find it easier to, if you're in Ableton or if you're in a different piece of software, you might actually lay your loop out, you know, in the timeline view of your 8 bars or 4 bars or 16 bars or whatever it is. That's a perfectly valid way of doing things. This for me just kind of suits the way that my brain works, and I like the flexibility of being able to hear different things with one another without having to drag different clips into the arrangement, into the timeline, and swap them out and stuff like that. So there you have it. I hope you found that interesting or insightful, maybe. I like the way that this track is going, and I'm really excited. Next time is gonna be getting into the song idea stage. This is where we've got not just one loop, but a couple of loops, maybe even 3 or whatever it is, but we want to have a few different sections, different musical material that we can swap between over the course of our full track to keep things interesting and have contrasting sections. So keep an eye out for that one coming up very soon. I will see you in the next one. The lighting in here is really weird. I got like a